This program is sponsored in part by the Center for Freedom and Prosperity and the Vernon K. Kriebel Foundation.
I'm from Appalachia, a coal miner's daughter. For hundreds of years, people settled here to find freedom. They persevered by relying on themselves and their family to survive.
Very nice.
But my home has changed. We've lost our self-reliance. Appalachia has been left to fail. I'm Emerald, a proud Appalachian, and I want to thrive, not just survive. So I'm going to Washington, D.C. and team up with famed economist Dr. Richard Rahn, and together we will find those people around the globe who are thriving against all odds.
One of the sights and sounds of a country that is one of the gems of Central Europe, with a story seldom been told.
But I feel so feminine and so pretty. I love it.
You can find style and originality in the most unexpected places. We've come to learn just how a country, long dominated by some of history's most punitive regimes, has been able to obtain improbable success.
My mom is a tailor, and we lived in a small village, and she was known to everybody. Very often we sleep felt in sleep with the sound of sewing machine.
Oh, wow.
My line is mostly reuse, recycle, and make new garments from old things. Even I can make custom size, custom made. Even if you bring your husband's shirts, I can make.
Oh, you make something out of.
Yes.
Oh, that's neat.
Marili Ruba is a clothing designer and mother who based the name of her line on a children's song after winning a design contest to get her business started.
Something like that.
That's cute. Do you ship to other places in the world?
Yes, of course.
Greenbird Clothing is recognized for transforming cast-offs into high fashion. And she isn't alone. Another company developed in this tiny country is literally bringing the world together.
The beginning of the Skype was 13 years ago, and the company was established as yet another startup company. When the spring was the company established, and the first launch happened on 29th of August. Then just a few months later, we had 1 million downloads of Skype and 300,000 users using it.
Andres is in the vanguard of the technological age. One man with a vision and drive that transformed how we communicate with each other. He founded Skype, which has become one of the most recognizable trademarks in the entire world.
Skype was very good in timing. That was the time when people needed the new way of communicating. Skype pretty much break through of the kind of standard ways of communication and offered to many users the easy and a cheap way to communicate with your friends and the families all around the globe.
What do Skype and Little Greenbird Clothing have in common? They both originated here in Estonia, a tiny country situated on the Baltic Sea with a population of just over 1 million people. 25 years ago, Estonians were part of the Soviet bloc. With an inflation rate of 1,000%, unemployment at 40%, famed economist Dr. Richard Rahn witnessed those dark days.
I was here in December 1989, just a couple weeks before Christmas. And at that point, the Soviet Union was already crumbling. Most of Eastern Europe, other than the Baltics, had already acquired their freedom. But at the time, there was a small Christmas tree standing here, sort of straggly, and they had just a few little electric lights on it, like 6. And they were being allowed to have the first Christmas concert series in the church. I guess the first time in 40 years.
Estonians had seen a ray of hope. In a series of demonstrations that is now collectively known as the Singing Revolution, Estonia declared its freedom from Soviet rule. Thousands of Estonians gathered together in Tallinn's large amphitheater to sing songs of Estonian national pride.
And it was so emotional and moving at the time, because you see the people, they were getting their freedom.
In another show of solidarity, more than 2 million people from Estonia to Lithuania join hands in what is now known as the Baltic chain.
Everybody had a strong sense of freedom because for 40 years fought against communist occupation, so we wanted to be free.
Finally, in 1991, Estonia's efforts were realized.
We have decided to include the Baltic states as a group.
And the country became a free country recognized by major powers throughout the world as an independent republic. Estonian success is nothing short of a miracle. In 1991, the average GDP per capita was a mere $2,000. Estonians had their freedom, but little else.
When you get the country which is having 1,000% inflation and 30% of economical drop and mostly 40% of working force becomes unemployed, so it's not very fun.
Today, Estonia is a very different place. This tiny country scores very high on the Human Development Index. It is the most free out of all the 15 of the former Soviet republics, and among these countries ranks number 1 in real per capita income, political freedom, life expectancy, Human Development Index, and many others. The country has been nicknamed E-Estonia because it is one of the most advanced countries in the world when it comes to its e-government, by which many government functions, including voting, are handled over the internet. Now, imagine paying taxes and setting up a business in less than 5 minutes. Under Estonia's e-residency program, 10,000 people have done just that.
I started about 8 years ago with my company. Now it's even easier. Your taxes, or you can make with this little card.
Estonian citizens use a unique identification card to perform secure online government functions. Estonians like Eva can even access such functions via mobile ID-enabled SIM cards.
I can sign different kind of documents very easily without even going to the meetings, without meeting all the people. We can, with this ID card, just we put it to the computer and we sign the documents and send it via email to each other. We can actually also travel. We don't need to bring our passport when we're traveling inside EU. Then we can log into banks. We can make bank transfers. I'm a mother of 2. So basically, if my son gets a bad grade at school, he doesn't, and maybe he doesn't want to tell me, I see it before he arrives home. This ID card also has an extension in mobiles, which is mobile ID. So basically, I have it in my mobile, and I can check all the things from my mobile also. I don't even need a computer.
This e-government function is the brainchild of the former Prime Minister.
I did this for personal purposes largely, because I was just lazy. I didn't want to carry all these papers on the press conferences. And then I said, no, that's it. So we will not carry them. We just do them directly.
Mart Laar joined the fight for a better Estonia, becoming Prime Minister of the country at a shockingly young age.
No, I was not yet 33, I was 32. And of course, I must say, quite big part of my government was even younger. So 26 and 27 and so on. So when we first time went to the European Council, then the security didn't want to let us in because they just say that some students or boys are coming and nobody of them looks like a prime minister, which is true. So I didn't look like prime minister very much.
When Estonia emerged from behind the Iron Curtain in 1991, the society was decades behind the rest of the world in technological innovation, having missed the progress experienced by the Western world from the 60s to the 80s. But, as is the Estonian nature, they looked at this as an opportunity rather than a crisis.
Cybernetica, a company that spun off from the Institute of Cybernetics, helped to develop much of the technology used in e-government.
If you talk about systems, then the secure networks for police, border guards, customs, those were first big projects. Then we did lots of works on the certification, digital signatures, helped to do the pilot project for our ID card, developed firewalls, VPN systems, this kind of stuff. Very, I would say, in today's terms, very simple and pragmatic and practical stuff.
And some of these cool products were systems that helped to change the way Estonian society functioned, making it highly efficient.
Technically, it's a very simple thing. It's just a small chip that contains cryptographic keys for authentication for digital signature. This is all ready-made technology available from major manufacturers. What really makes this technology work, that is enabler, is this environment that we have.
Estonia passed the Digital Signatures Act in 2000, which made signatures valid whether signed on paper or PC.
And I think that another very important thing is that we have a means to identify persons. And this is in some countries what is missing. In Estonia, we actually have a single personal code, and it is mandatory to use it.
The basic building block of this system is the unique ID number that is used across all systems, from passports to banking to government offices. Estonia takes protection of this ID number very seriously.
If somebody violates your privacy, if somebody really collects data from different governmental authorities and tries to correlate them, then it is possible to detect that this happened, it is possible to find out who did it, and there is a means to punish those people. Actions are really monitored, and if they do something illegal, they are really catched and brought into the court. I mean, the ID card itself does not guarantee your security, your privacy. The computer that you use with your ID card, it must be secure. It must be well maintained. It must be free of malware and viruses, etc. It's really not a kind of like a simple solution for all these kind of security problems. The business use is much more important, and this is where actually a majority of transactions are made. In Estonia, it's this infrastructure that we have, ID card, X-road, etc. It's shared by public and private users. And I think that majority of transactions, majority of digital signatures, it's actually in the telecom banking sector between companies making contracts with each other. Only like a smaller number of those authentications and digital signatures are given if you're communicating with the government. And when they have a need to communicate with government, they don't have to learn anything new. This is kind of like common thing. Yeah, I take my ID card, I remember my PINs because I use them every day. I can declare my taxes or establish a company or whatever is my need.
Estonia became an independent republic in the early 90s. A couple of people actually inside the Institute of Cybernetics thought that we don't want to do only research, fundamental research, but we actually want to create cool products and have a competitive edge based on science. So they created a company called Cybernetica. We became fully independent in 1997. And since then, we've had our own journey. We have been involved in the creation of the Estonian e-government system. Of course, there are other companies that have done various bits and pieces of it, but we have done some of the integral parts of it that are very well known around the world. Trust, first of all, in technology and how technology can change things and make your life easier. The politicians had actually trust in engineers. I see that is not the case in a lot of countries, but Estonia kind of pulled together and decided that, okay, let's do something different. Let's invest into e-government. We're a small country with a very scarce population. This e-thing could provide a better life for us.
Under former Prime Minister Laar's administration, the country established rule of law, eliminating much of the corruption. It also adopted a flat tax and implemented strong protections for private property, free markets, considerable trade freedom, and the lowest debt GDP ratio in Europe.
We just did what was possible. Everybody had a strong sense of freedom because for 40 years fought against communist occupation, so we wanted to be free.
Under his leadership, the economy started growing at around 7% a year. Foreign trade increased by 25% a year, and taxes fell, which made it easy for anyone in Estonia, indeed across the globe, to open a business in their country, It became an incubator for pioneering business ideas, for its newfound transparency, streamlined government, and its size. LAR motivated young innovators not afraid to take risks that would help launch a digital revolution. Meelis Kitsing was one of those young leaders that LAR inspired.
It was a very interesting time to grow up, to be a teenager, because you had all this new information and all these new things around you, and you could actually get involved and you could take part, and I think it made life interesting, basically. Younger people are always sort of willing to take more risk, right? They also had pretty good knowledge of the oppression that had taken place during the Soviet time, and young people are sort of more anti-authority. They question more authority, and so that's why it's not surprising that when Estonia formed first governments in the early 1990s, lots of people in those the ministers and those governments were very young.
Kitsing, who now serves as a director at the Estonian Business School, was part of a group of students who boycotted military instruction in Estonian high schools.
The idea was that usually the reason why you have more older people in the government is that they have more experience, right? But I think in the early 1990s in Estonia, lots of people felt that if you have more experience, then you have the experience that we really don't need, right? Because you have the experience from the Soviet times. So that's why it was kind of easier for the younger people to get involved in politics. And I think it tremendously benefited from the fact that those young people in the government were willing to make really bold decisions.
Estonia's technological renaissance in their e-government program, along with pro-business economic policies, paved the way for companies like Skype. Estonia is often referred to as startup country.
Some time ago, we tried to calculate how many companies have ex-Skypers in them, and I think it was over 100 startups where our people participated in or even have founded them. So I think it's a huge number and a huge influence for the world.
Skype, as an innovative company, incubated a lot of interesting new ideas how people can communicate in the future. And most of them, I think we have realized by today.
It was a proof that you don't need to be in Silicon Valley to make something big and change the world. And when people realized that, it helped them to pursue their dreams and start building things without needing a big budget or moving to States. And from there, obviously, we have people who had enough money to support and fund the startups done by Estonians because we had belief that those guys can actually deliver. As a country, Estonia is the right size. So you can do a lot of IT things here on the government level and just to try things out. And the cost of failure is not that big.
Lower levels of corruption and more economic freedom meant more foreign investments into the small country. Because of Estonia's very open free trade policy, the international market began to take interest in the tiny Baltic country. In 2011, Microsoft recognized the potential of Skype and bought the company.
Microsoft has been a very, I would say, good and friendly owner of Skype. We still continue developing software as we used to. We still have this great office as we used to, and we still have those great people that we used to. The key for a very innovative IT company is that you need to keep the innovation going. You can't have innovation that your managers tell you what to do. Innovation is coming from your employees. You have to empower and create the ways how your employees can surface their innovative ideas.
And innovation has taken Estonia from a poor, broken country to an example to the rest of the world of what can be accomplished, even when it looks impossible. The new tech mentality has been a breath of fresh air for the next generation of young people, with some venture capitalists calling it one of the hottest startup scenes. But some say the generation is forgetting the old days.
They don't know the old Estonia, and they are living in this very comfortable Estonia. They get everything they want. I try to teach them how to keep our traditions, which are from our family, and I hope they love it.
It's really easy to be successful here, and all you need to do is to work. And that's really honest. Success is honest here. It's not about the connections you have, it's not about the finance you get, it's about you and the hard work you do.
Of course, I can talk a lot about very practical ideas like flat tax or free trade or so on. These are all important. But basically, it depends from the attitude. So the first of all is you really do it. When you are starting reforms, don't hesitate. Just move on and don't be afraid. These are most important because these are problems which I see in many countries. The people just are not having political courage to do the reforms. They think too much on political career.
We've been very open. Sometimes it's very hard. You're open to international immense competition, but in the end, I guess it makes you stronger, and that has shown that actually we've taken the right steps.
Its capital city of Tallinn, the best preserved medieval city in Northern Europe, has shed its dusty gray history and provides a colorful tourist delight for travelers from all over the globe. Stores filled with Estonian-made goodies, and wonderful restaurants for world-class dining. Tourists can sip on the local specialty of mulled wine to stay warm, while taking in the sights and sounds of medieval Estonia. With easy access to the Baltic Sea and its groundbreaking open trade policy, Estonia has a very high trade-to-GDP ratio. But perhaps that's just another way Estonia reflects its history as it forges ahead into the future.
But down there is what historically was actually Tallinn, the city of traders. And in the medieval times, it was a very important trading city between the east and west, probably like one of the richest cities in the area. Merchants lived down there, and you had landlords who lived up here. It was a free city. It was part of the Hanseatic League. Serfs or slaves escaped from the countryside. They could stay in the city for 1 year, and one day they could become free citizens as well. So now, one of the things that Estonia kind of re-established was that we became more and more open to the trade, as we have historically been. So if you look at our trade to GDP ratio, 165% to GDP, so we are very big open traders. And obviously now when we are in the European Union, we have the free trade with all the EU nations. I think in a way it builds on this historical legacy of Hanseatic League, connecting different cities in Northern Europe, so that they could benefit from that. So.
Free trade has been kind of one of the cornerstones for us, and it has never been debated. I mean, most of the discussion is why regulate it at all. The tax system has been quite favorable. We've abolished the so-called company profit tax, or it doesn't exist when you reinvest your goods, and I think that's a very clear sign for companies to actually invest into new technologies and into their growth as well. That gives a very good and strong signal for growth.
During Soviet times, Westerners had only one hotel choice when visiting Estonia, the Hotel Vero with its secret 23rd floor, whose only patrons were KGB spies listening in on the various hotel guests. Today, it's one of many hotels like the Hotel Telegraph in Tallinn, hosting tech leaders coming to Estonia to talk openly about their newest innovations. The emphasis is always looking towards the future, not dwelling on the past.
You have to think what you want, what you need to. You have to think about the goal, and you just have to work towards that.
In a post-Soviet 1991 Estonia, the odds looked impossible. The Iron Curtain had lifted, but there was still a heavy load of obstacles facing the small republic. But with a resilient mindset, a willingness to get the key infrastructure right, and an openness to continually reinvent it, innovation, a culture conducive to startups, and an investment in trusting its people, Estonia ranks at the top of all former Soviet countries and even competes with other world leaders. Estonia today is a very different place than Richard Rahn witnessed when he was here in 1989.
You just feel very good. You know, it's uplifting to see, again, a modern city here and people who are well-dressed, well-fed, and part of the developed modern world, and that's so much different 25 years ago. I think we learned the basic thing is that freedom, and they were the first to go totally free with the economy, is so important. And Estonia, of course, has done the best of all the transition economies, the economies that used to be in Eastern Europe and part of the Soviet Union, because they went quickly. They didn't know they couldn't do things, and so they went ahead and did them. And they went to free trade. They've got the best tax system in all of Eastern Europe, strong protection of private property, the rule of law, reasonable levels of government spending, and they've done all the basics almost perfectly, not totally perfectly, but better than the others. And we see the results. Here is a vibrant, modern country. It's like a typical Scandinavian country now. It doesn't look at anything at all like the old Soviet Union. I thought a key thing that former Prime Minister Mark Barr said to us was Estonia did not have any type of industrial policy. It didn't try to pick winners or losers. It just allowed the people to be free to innovate as they saw fit. As a result, we see more rapid development of technology. I mean, creating something like Skype and all these other technology companies here, that became as a result of freedom.
A little country with a small population and little natural resources has a lot to teach even larger countries about what can be achieved when it seems as though all the odds are stacked against you. Nothing is impossible with the right attitude and policies.
Kõigile hea, ootan sind, miks tegi küll vea. Ma soovin, et mul silitaks pea. Ma üksinda jäin, kus peidab nüüd end, sest nuttes raugeb viimane jõud. Ma hoian sul käes, sa kallistad mind. Kas meie vahel lõppen armastuskuul? Sa anna mul andeks, kui vähegi
Out of all the places I've been to around the world, Estonia just might be the most improbable success.